Welcome to the Love, Sex and Freedom podcast. This is where you're going to discover how to bring awakening into the body and into everyday life through powerful tantric teachings. Get ready to release, open, and step into your true power.
So the term shadow was coined by Carl Jung, the philosopher, and it means that which is unconscious. So we have our conscious things that we're working with, right? But the unconscious is where the deep, deep, deep transformation happens, that is lasting transformation. And that's what we're passionate about teaching the world, is how to access the unconscious through breath, sound, and movement. And until you do that and own those parts of the unconscious that from a young age have been pushed down for good reason, to create safety for yourself and to deal with the situations that you've been in, then those unconscious shadows are going to sabotage your life. And you can all feel those places, right, where the mind, the unconscious, comes in and sabotages and is just whispering that black wolf that's in your ear. And so one of the best pieces of advice that I got from Raven is to run as many shadows and energies through your body to own them as possible. One, for your own growth, but two, to be a supportive practitioner in one-on-one work. And it's been a game changer, an absolute game changer. And we all have, there's shadows that are personal shadows, and then there's collective shadows. So I just want to bring them into your awareness and to feel them in the body. But we've all got the victim shadow. And you know when that one comes up. Hands up if you got the victim shadow. Keep your hand up if you got the control shadow. Oh, that's a beauty. And then there's greed. Let's own our greed. Right? Present or past. You can put your hands down, we'll be here.
Be here all day.
Right? The wounded child shadow, the saboteur shadow, the caretaker shadow, addiction shadow, right? So there's all of these energies that we're all here nodding our head, going, yep, know that one, yep, know that one, yep, know that. But until you fully own it and just let that shadow out, then it stays, if you have the big beach ball and you keep it underwater, you're like, this is so funny, I can, hold it underwater, and then it's like, boom, smacks you in the face. That's kind of what the shadow's like. So in the process that we're going to do today, it's a Tibetan Buddhist process called Chod, I believe, and it's Feed the Demons shadow. There's a part of this process where you really just let that shadow speak. And sometimes it can get pretty gnarly and a little bit shocking. I remember when I was actually after teaching my second Fundamentals of Tantra workshop, and I had two huge men in the space that had a massive issue with a female teaching Tantra. And I processed that the next morning, and my torturer shadow came out, and it was definitely the most edgy shadow I've ever worked with of what I wanted to do to these two men, to make them feel the pain that I felt. But when you own those shadows and you let them out, and they cease to be there in the kind of psychic background that can come out in all these ways that just keep sabotaging our lives and our relationships and our sense of inner peace and inner joy. So shadow work is by far my favorite work out of all of this body of work, because it's the quickest path to transformation, to that metamorphosis. And out the other side of this, through the unconscious, you actually see that these shadows are our greatest teachers and are there with these jewels for us, our allies. But because we've suppressed them and denied them and not listened to them, they've become like these feral animals that are just like... And you know how you see, like, on social media, those skanky dogs who are, like, being outcast on the side of the street, looking all mangy, and then and they're just, like, wanting to, like, bite and no, don't trust anything. And then with love and listening to them and letting them be all gnarly and festy, but then keep loving them, keep listening to them, give them what they actually need, which is always some form of loving nurture, right? Then they just start to expand into these like incredibly loving, committed animals. So the shadows are a little bit like that. And so receiving a breath together.
Yeah, sharing the two emotions. And how many of you have thrown the same shadow or thing into the fire over and over and over again? It keeps just suddenly reappearing in your life. You're like, damn fire, what do you not work? I see you burning. Like, you're supposed to work, right? So let's look at that. Let's really look at that, because part of the process that we're taking you into, there's a key piece in this process that I don't see done in a lot of shadow work. Because a lot of shadow work is like, I'm going to release all the things that no longer serve me into the fire. And that's beautiful. Like, there's a great intention in that. There's nothing wrong with that intention. But if someone keeps knocking at your door and you keep trying to burn it in the fire, what is it often doing? It's just getting louder and louder, saying, hello. That just reminded me of a story. I remember years ago when I was going to Russia for the first time, and I was getting had to get my visa for Russia, and I had sent it in months and months before. And then like 3-4 days before, I still heard nothing. And I had a couple days in New York City before I was flying out. So I showed up at the embassy where I knew my passport was at like right in the morning. And I went inside and I was like, you have my passport? And they were like, yeah, no, we don't. And I'm like, you do. And I was trying to be really nice and sweet and generous about it. I even had a nice translator there with me. And then I watched this whole operation in there, and there was just like chaos everywhere. There were stacks of passports everywhere. And then about halfway through the morning, so I was just sitting there just hoping that someone was going to come out. And I was like, trying to be all nice about it. I just hear this pounding at the door that was like, boom, boom. No one's paying any attention to it. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, was someone going to answer the door? And then finally, after like 10 minutes of someone pounding at this embassy door, someone comes out and they just start yelling at each other. And then finally, after the yelling, like the guy that had been being yelled at goes inside, sorts through some passports, and goes and gives it to the guy that had been pounding at the door. And I was like, okay, like this is how we need to get things done here. We need to get really loud. And so, I took my lunch break there. I came back after lunch break, and then I just started getting really loud. I was just like, and as soon as I got really loud, they started to like respect me more. And I, okay, all right, yeah, I think you're ready to come now. Like they didn't say that, but that was part of what was happening. So by the end of the day, like after I got loud, they finally miraculously found my passport in the same envelope I'd sent it in months before. They were like, okay, we do this. And they tried to charge me more. And I was like, no. They're like, okay, all right, yeah, fine. And at the end of that situation, I had my passport, I had my visa. I said, I think I'm ready for Russia now. Pardon if that, hurts any Russians' feelings, but I'm sure you can appreciate as well. But the thing I learned about that was like this part of our shadow that's knocking on the door, are we listening? Or are we just ignoring it? We're just ignoring it, saying, oh, just go away. And this also happens in our body. How many of you had ailments or things inside of you that you're just hoping one day you're going to wake up and then it's going to be gone. No, it's the body actually speaking to you. And so in the process that we're going to share with you, this gives me an opportunity to meet some of those places inside and to start to give them and personify some of that which you have been pushing down. And the key piece that I mentioned earlier that most people don't do around shadows is asking that shadow, what is it that you need? What do you want? Because I keep trying to push you away and you keep knocking at my door. So clearly you're trying to tell me something. Clearly you keep showing up into my world, into my awareness. You show up in this relationship, in this business, and this and that. And what is it that you actually want? And what I find in myself is when I ask that question to the parts inside of me, and I've done this so many times through the years, the answer that gets revealed isn't anything that my mind could have thought of. And this is why it's so important. This is why we're doing embodiment somatic work. It's because if you could think of the thing your shadow needed without going into the body, then you do it. But the mind can't get there. It's accessing a different place of our neurological, somatic understanding inside of our body. And that's the mystery that happens when we actually turn off that part of us that's seeking cognitive understanding and we drop into the felt sense of our embodied awareness. This academy is called Embodied Awakening Academy. This is embodied awakening. It's not Mind Valley. I love Mind Valley. I'm a teacher in some of the online classes for Mind Valley. I love their work, but it's Mind Valley. It's not Body Valley. It's Mind Valley. And a lot of our world is a mind valley of just circulating minds around the fucking globe, one mind to another mind. And I love that to a degree. My geek loves that. I can talk stories and understand the mysteries of the universe cognitively till I'm blue in the face. But it wasn't until I gave myself permission to feel and to embody the uncomfortable parts inside of me that I really started to access a place of power in me that I never could cognitively understand before. And that was a power that can walk into a room and simply be in my power without needing to demonstrate my power. And so a lot of the worries and the fears that exist inside of, I'm sure, many of you, is being afraid of stepping into your true power. How many of you ever felt this way? You've realized there's so much inside of me. Who am I to step into power? Who are you not to? Do you think in this wild, crazy universe, what are the chances of your incarnation? Like, what are the actual chances that in your incarnation and for you to be listening to this conversation right now? It's like 1 in a billion. And so in that awareness, you have a choice. You can play small with your power till you're on your deathbed. That's the choice. Or you can also say, you know what? There is something powerful inside of me. There is a potency alive. There is some fire of transformation I need to ignite more so that I'm no longer buying into the beliefs of my childhood that are still controlling me. So I'm no longer buying into the beliefs of my value systems of my caregivers, mother, father, that are still controlling the decision-making center of your body because you're afraid to step into your power because of all the things that they implied upon you. All of that exists, and I know it does because it's in me as well. So in that, there's a choice to look and to confront that which is getting in the way of your true power, because only you know it. In this process that we'll guide you into, will be a place to not only feel it, but to really move into it in a way that gets to change your entire reality. And these processes, more than anything, if I see the large, impactful, transformational change that happens in someone's life, it's from shadow work. Number one. Absolutely. And people that aren't doing it are just talking stories till they're blue in the face. And I'm done with it. Yeah? Deep breath in.
And to give a bit of context of where you can use this practice in your life so that when you're in the embodiment of it, that can integrate and you can use this after the retreat. You know how on Base Chakra Day we did the process, like what to do when your shit comes up, right? That process can lead you into 50 different directions, all right, that are all different process types, per se. This is one of those. And then on Heart Chakra Day, we're going to be doing masculine, feminine aspecting. That's another one. So it's always a mystery when there's a trigger and a contraction in the body of where that's going to take you. But just know that every time you sit with yourself and you feel what there is to feel, that there's a possibility that it may actually just be not to do with that person and to do with something that's living inside of you, right? That's where you apply shadow work. And you'll feel it in your body, especially after doing this process, because you'll become familiar with what it's like to do shadow work, and that's how you implement it. So receiving a breath. So there's feeling the trigger, there's realizing that what's coming up isn't about the other person, actually, it's this shadowing yourself that you need to check out. And then there's the integration, which is the implementation of this inner work that you've done. And a lot of people forget this bit. So the process you're about to go into is brave and courageous to feel these parts of yourself that majority of people spend a lifetime or lifetimes ignoring. So you're part of 5%, I would say, of the population who are consciously choosing to look at that and evolve through that. Once you've done this work, any process that you've done, and you find out what you need, and then you make a commitment to yourself, right? When I'm in this situation, I am going to pattern interrupt and do something differently. It's going to feel uncomfortable. So don't think that just because you do shadow work process, suddenly it's like, I feel calm and confident and in my ease to express myself authentically. But if you're meeting your edge with that, which is where Kali and that death process comes in, and you're actually activating that muscle of doing something differently towards the direction you want to go, then you move through the uncomfortability into a new pattern and habit. And just at the same time, you're giving yourself and you're feeding this shadow every day. Write that shit down. Every time you do shadow work, write down what it needs. Check it every day. Am I doing this? Am I integrating this into my life? It is going to make that shift from the current habits and patterns that you have that are unconscious to the new way of living that your soul desires to walk in this world so much easier, because you're recalibrating your nervous system to that new vibration.
Thanks for listening to the Love, Sex and Freedom podcast. For more great free resources, in-person and online workshops, and our retreats, find us on Instagram and Facebook at Embodied Awakening Academy or visit embodiedawakeningacademy.com.